Okay, so I developed a mobile game over this past week. I've never finished anything nor published anything, so this was a new experience. Here's what I learned. I built the original tech demo for this game back in 2020, right before the pandemic started, and haven't touched it since, and then I lost all the files because I've moved since then. So this game was completely developed this week. I do have a clip of the original, which is playing right now. So the game is completely different now, where the control scheme's different. Now it's like a hold instead of like a tap, and then the game just controls different entirely. Now mobile games are mostly based on like one concept or one game mechanic, and that's kind of what this game is based on too. So the original idea was when you would tap the screen, you would add vertical momentum, but all your horizontal momentum was from rotational. But now you do add forwards momentum every time you click and hold. So the longer you hold, the faster you go, so on and so forth, but the faster the wall behind you follows. One of the things I wasn't expecting with this was how much evolution the core mechanic of this game went through. So the original version I made, the only horizontal momentum you would gain was from rotational. The only thing you could add is vertical, which I eventually changed that so the game would be a lot easier. So now every time you hold the screen, you gain momentum, so on and so forth. But the original version is a far cry from what it is now. In my opinion, mobile games are probably the best place for a indie developer to start. It's so easy to publish something on Google Play and iOS. So just do it. If you need to make a game, constrain yourself to 1 week. I spent about 40 hours on this total, which I will admit is a lot of time. I'm only a part-time worker, but just do it. It's fun. It's a good challenge to make something this fast. Might not be the best game in the world, but you'll learn. Your first game you ever make does not need to be polished whatsoever. Obviously, you don't want it buggy or to like wreck people's phones, so make it as good as possible. But if it's not perfect, it doesn't matter. It's going on the App Store. People are gonna download it, play it for like a week maybe, and then uninstall it anyways. So you're not being held forever. People aren't actually paying for it. They're just watching ads. I'm definitely not sponsored, but one tool I would recommend for any indie game developer is colors. You need to find a good color palette for your game to look good, and color theory is so much easier with programs like this. Another quick tip is get your friends to play it when it's like semi decently working, because you might have to completely scrap that game mechanic because it's just not fun. So I originally had it so when you would bounce the cube, it would rotate, and it was just too hard. It was super easy for me because I've been developing it and I know the technique, but anyone new to the game could not play it. It's not easy, it's not intuitive. Your mobile game needs to be as intuitive as possible, otherwise no one's going to be able to pick it up. People do not read tutorials on mobile games. They have to be easy concepts. So if if it's not fun, scrap it. I spent a lot of time this week making a predictor, so when you would hit the ground and you would tap the screen, it would predict the best rotation. Turns out, although like that made the original game easier, I just had to completely scrap the original concept and hop to something new, where it's instead of all forwards momentum being added by rotation, I added a little bit of more forwards momentum and higher vertical momentum, so the game's a lot more easy and fun. Another thing to keep the game fun is make sure your game overs make sense. Although like your game over, it could be like the perfect prediction, but if it games over before your player realizes that they failed, then it's not fun. You have to keep your game frustrating enough to keep them playing, but not frustrating because the game's broken. Also, be prepared for random bugs. Bugs happen all the time. Just make sure you can Google your way out of the problem. So here, I click on the store, cube falls down. It's a nice animation. Cube does not rotate to 0. So the reason why is because I was limiting the rotation completely, and then also being able to jump from the bottom there. So always make sure to play test your game because you will miss something. It's inevitable. So just keep playtesting your game. Make sure you fix those bugs as soon as possible because Fixing bugs later in development is kind of hell because you don't really remember your code. Making your game look superficially pretty is also nice because you want people to be engaged, because the trail just adds a little bit of eye-catchiness, makes it a little more interesting for the player. And then another thing to keep in mind is when people are buying things from your store, you want to make sure that people know what they own. I know it's something simple, but like I completely forgot to do that for up until like the last day on Saturday. I was like, oh, people should probably know what the heck they've bought and how much money they have too. Now, one of the most dramatic things that happened during development was I lost an entire day trying to figure out why the game would no longer compile to Android. And the reason why is because when I added ads, I accidentally duplicated assets because I used both Meditation and Unity's original ad program. So I still had a few files in my Android APK folder, or whatever the development folder was, or library folder, and it would not compile because it had duplicated assets. So always make backups, and when adding, especially when adding new libraries, especially temperamental beta libraries like Meditation. Although Unity's playtest area is super easy to just test it, always make sure to test your game on Android frequently, because that white square area, the reason why I have that is because the aspect ratios on the test area and the mobile device are completely different. So you have to make sure that it works on Android completely, because sometimes your touch areas are not the same if you're using hardcode values. Now I'm using percentages, so it works a lot better on cross-platform. And then there was another glitch here too with the ads, so if you watched an ad to revive yourself, you would just get infinite money because you were put past the spikes, but then the spikes no longer knew that you weren't in game, so you would just get infinite money. That was a fairly easy bug fix, but yep, constantly bug test your game. You want to iron out as many bugs as possible so the game's still fun. It is against Google policy to release a purposely buggy game too, so keep that in mind. Now, getting your Google account to be a developer took a lot longer than I thought it would. So on Friday, I decided that's the day I wanted to make my account. I would recommend doing that like midway through the process, just so you're an official developer before the end of the week, so you can actually publish your game, because there's a lot of information you need to go through and fill out. You need to submit your driver's license or passport or some identification of yourself so you can become an official developer, and then you have to wait some more time to actually get it published, and you have to go through huge checklists and publics, whatever. You need your terms and conditions, your data policies. So there's a lot of paperwork that goes into this. Don't be afraid of it. Just work through it. It'll probably take you a day to fill out, like 6 hours to fill out all the information. But once you do that once, you should be good forever, or at least until Google changes their policies. And then when creating your privacy policy, you want to make sure to include their firstborn child. They don't have it there for some reason, so you just click next and you'll be set. Okay, maybe not. Don't do that. And this brings us to the end of the video. Thank you for watching. I also realized I never said the name of the game in this entire recording. It's Cautious Kits. It should be available on Google Play, and then eventually iOS, but that's going to be a little bit longer. I was approved, but it's still waiting for Google's approval, so I have to wait until that, but it will be down in the description. If you got this far in the video, like, subscribe, helps me out, engage, hit the comments, whatever. Thank you guys so much. It's a pleasure making these videos, so I'm just gonna keep doing it whether or not anyone's watching.